welcome to the Ideal Woman, an SID Women Ministries Department program. I'm your presenter, Dr. Edward Edimoyo. I'm a lecturer and the Dean of Student Affairs at Usango University. As we look at our very first presentation, which is entitled The Woman as Helper, a Biblical Perspective, I invite you to the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 18. Genesis, chapter 2, verse 18, and I read, "The Lord God thought, it is not good for man to be alone. Let me make him a helper, matching him." Verse 20, "Man gave names to all the cattle, to the birds of the sky, and all the wild animals of the plain, but no helper was found for man matching him." Friends, for the first time since Genesis chapter 1, God speaks or thinks. The original word here, amari, can have both senses of speaking and thinking. Just as the creation of mankind was preceded by divine self-deliberation, "Let us make man," so here the need for the creation of woman is adumbrated by God. It is not good for man to be alone. Let me make him a helper, matching him. Elsewhere, the word for help or helper, azar, usually refers to divine assistance, but it is used here in this passage and in other passages 3 times to talk about prophetic military aid. God's concern, friends, is that man is alone. Whether the man felt his aloneness at first is not stated. Only the divine viewpoint is actually given. God has created human life to have fellowship with him, but also to be a social entity, building relationships with other human beings. Man will not live until he loves, giving himself away to another on his own level. Isolation is not the divine norm for human beings. Community is the creation of God. So when we talk about community, you may have problems in your community, but community was created by God. God did not create man to be alone. We were created to live with other human beings. Against the sevenfold refrain of "and God saw that it was good," in chapter 1, the divine observation that something was not right with man's situation is actually startling. This was before sin entered the world. It alerts the reader to the importance of companionship for man. Eve, therefore, was created to fill a unique special role in creation, an emptiness which was there even before there was sin. Not only was she to minister with Adam in his assignments in the garden, but she was also given specific ministries to Adam. She was his helpmate. She was designed to assist and to complement him. In like manner, when we look at things today, a woman, right from the time a girl is born up to the time when a person grows old and dies, during this time period, a woman was actually designed, tailor-made to meet all the needs that were to come. She was designed to assist and to complement Adam, or the man. He needs a helper matching him. To help someone does not imply that the helper is stronger than the helped. Simply that the latter strength is inadequate by itself. Eve was the final creative act of the week. That is the first week. The complementary companion of Adam, the first man. She resembled Adam enough for companionship, yet was very different in a complementary way. Yes, her strengths blended with his so that together they were something neither could be separately. Suitable, a helper suitable for him. The original word there, kenegdo, literally like what is in front of him, indicates a correspondence between the man and the woman. The focus is rather on the equality of the two in terms of their essential constitution. Man and woman share in the human sameness that cannot be found elsewhere in creation among the beasts. In every way, the woman shares the same features of personhood as does the man. In Genesis chapter 1, 26 to 28, this quality of the man and woman as image bearers has priority over their differences in sexual roles, although both were crucial to realizing the intended blessing. The compound prepositional phrase matching him, literally like opposite him, is found only here in this passage. It seems to express the notion of complementarity rather than identity. Just to give an illustration, it's like my two arms. I have my right arm here and my left arm. On my right arm, my bigger thumb is on the left. And on my left arm, my bigger thumb is on the right. And yet these two complement each other. When I put my hands together here, they complement each other so well. And you can see that the two thumbs are right next to each other. And yet on both of them, on each one of them, the bigger thumb is on the right on one, and then on the other one it is on the left. And yet they complement each other so well. So was the helper created for the man. She is called Adam's helper, the original word ezer, which defines the role that the woman will play. A question may be asked, in what way would Eve become a helper to the man? The term means help in the sense of aid, support, and is used of the Lord's aiding his people in the face of enemies. Moses spoke of God as his helper who delivered him from Pharaoh, and it is often associated with shield in describing God's protective care of his people. How is a woman a helper to the man? She is supposed to become his shield, his protector. The help looked for is not just assistance in his daily work or in the procreation of children, though these aspects may be included, but the mutual support companionship provides. When we read Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9, we find that two are better than one. For if they fall, one will lift his fellow. God's design, as we look at this aspect, was that the two were going to assist each other. Despite God's identification of man's need, there is a delay in his provision. Contrast the instantaneous fulfillment of the divine way in chapter 1. When you read chapter 1 of the book of Genesis, God speaks things into existence. He speaks and they come to be. He speaks and they come to be. But when it comes to the creation of a woman, there is a pause. And this hold up creates suspense. It allows us to feel man's loneliness. Are you able to feel man's loneliness there? All the animals are brought before him, and we see him looking at each one in the hope it would make a suitable companion for man. In one of the Jewish writings, we find one author picturing the animals passing by in pairs and commenting, everything has its partner, but I have no partner. Though in Hebrew these creatures' names sound so similar to Eve's, they are not what man is looking for. Despite man's superiority to the other creatures, as demonstrated by his naming them, in the Hebrew culture, to give a name is to something is to assert authority over it. There is actually no suitable helper that is found for the man. The creation of woman from man's rib supplies what was missing for his perfect happiness. 5 short clauses in verses 21 to 22 describing God's work complete the description of the task of finding a companion for man that was begun in verse 18. His success is rapturously acclaimed in the poetic outburst in verse 23. Indeed, the whole account of woman's creation has a poetic flavor. It is certainly mistaken to read it as an account of a clinical operation or as an attempt to explain some feature of man's anatomy. One man came to me and said, "Is it true that man has one rib that is missing?" Well, this passage is not about that. Rather, it brilliantly depicts the relation of man and wife. Just as the rib is found at the side of the man and is attached to him, even so the good wife is the rib of her husband and stands at his side to be his helper, his counterpart, and her soul is bound up with his. Matthew Henry comment comes closer to the spirit of the text. Not made out of his head to top him, not out of his feet to be trampled upon by him, but out of his side to be equal with him, under his arm to be protected, and near his heart to be loved. Charming though this picture square tale is, should be borne in mind that it has a more serious purpose than just entertainment. Here, the ideal of marriage as it was understood in ancient Israel is being portrayed, a relationship characterized by harmony and intimacy between the partners. The destruction of this relationship is described in the following chapters, but like other aspects of man's existence set out in chapter 1 and 2, the first days of the first marriage remain a goal to which Israel hoped to return to when the promises to Abraham were finally fulfilled. Yes, friends, the story therefore needs to be closely read, for in its poetic phraseology, I express some of the Old Testament's fundamental convictions about the nature and purpose of marriage. This unit, however, is not merely sexual. It involves sharing spiritual, intellectual, emotional dimensions as well. Jewish sentiments noted this: whoever has no wife exists without goodness, without helpmate, without joy, without blessing, without atonement, without well-being, without a full life. Indeed, such a one reduces the representation of the divine image on earth. Of course, they see this as the ideal. The entrance of sin has distorted everything. Reality brings about widowhood, it brings about divorce, it brings about people being single throughout their lives, it brings about single parenting. But even in these circumstances, God's grace is still available. His aim is to bring us back to his original purpose. Satan has not only brought about these situations, marriage, which should have become a harbor in times of storm after sin's entrance, has now sometimes become the storm itself in the harbor. Even if marriages are made in heaven, somebody says humans have to be responsible for their maintenance. Marriage, somebody says, is like flies on a screen door. Those on the outside want to get in, but some of those already inside want to get out. In all these situations, God should be the common denominator. The ideal homeland for the Israelites was Canaan, yet they were in Egypt 400 years plus. They were also in the wilderness 40 years. What is important is that he was with them in every situation. His presence made a difference. So, child of God, it doesn't matter in what situation you may be. You may be a single parent. You may be a person who has not been married. You may be a widow. What is important, the common denominator or the common factor is that make sure you have God in every situation that you are passing through. Marriage is not finding the person with whom you can live, somebody said, but finding that person with whom you cannot live without. And in that equation, make sure that God is there. Do join us again next week for yet another interesting topic. Being widowed and yet remaining an